Okay, so The Last of Us Episode 3, morning episode. We're still kind of reeling from the loss we've experienced in Episode 2. And, overall, I liked this episode well enough. There are some nice recreations of scenes from the game, as well as brand new moments, some of which I found really well done. Yeah, overall, I liked it. As we discussed in our previous reviews of the show so far, I feel like they are following the story of the game quite closely, while I was hoping for them to do something a little bit different, maybe tell an intermediate story between what is part 2 of the game, between part 1 of the game and part 2, but they decided to follow very closely what happens in the games. And so my enjoyment of what's to come is based on my expectations of what they're adapting. So it's hard for me right now. I guess, once I have the full picture of the season, it will be easier for me to evaluate the singular episodes. I enjoyed this. There's a few things that I want to discuss that we'll get to. But yeah, overall, it was a fine episode. It was kind of like preparing everything for what's to come. It was setting the stage for the second half of the season, which is going to be the action-packed, crazy. Some shit is going to go down in Seattle. So
yeah, they've clearly, at the very end of the episode, they really want to establish they have a massive force here, and this is going to be an against all odds type scenario. And that's definitely something that's in your head the whole time. Is like, how are Ellie and Dina going to be able to do this? Because even with as little information as we know, they're already outnumbered by the small crew that they sent out. So yeah, it was I felt similar. I actually didn't really like this episode.
I mean, it's a bit slow, it's
yeah, and just obviously dealing with the fallout of what happened in the previous episode. I just think there was some scenes that we should have got, and some scenes that we shouldn't have been focusing on. We didn't have a flashback with Joel at all this episode.
No, they are holding on to those, I guess.
Yeah, and I think maybe it would have been nice to get one of those already, or I thought potentially the story was going to pick up straight after the events of the second episode. I think it would have been nice, instead of to have other people's reactions to them entering back into Jackson with Joel in tow. I think that would have been a more powerful sequence than just having Tommy by his corpse and sort of mourning him that way in the opening scene. I thought something like that would have been better.
And that's what happens in the game, because in the game there's no time skip. We go straight into Ellie's revenge quest. She leaves town. Instead, here they decided to open with Tommy kind of tending to Joel's corpse. And Joel's is only one of many bodies that they have gathered in this room, which in of itself wants to show, what happened, the toll that this attack from the infected had on Jackson, but at the same time kind of diminishes the impact of Joel's death itself.
Yeah.
Compared to the game, the show is way more concerned with the world surrounding these two main characters, Joel and Ellie, while the games were, especially the first one, very solely focused on Joel and Ellie.
Yeah, are we dealing in the game, or are the Jackson also dealing with the fallout of loads of other deaths, or is it just Joel?
No, because there's no attack from the infected in the game. There's just clickers and other infected outside of town, but Jackson remains untouched, and Tommy's not even in the town at the time, so it's a very different setup. Here, they decided to give Ellie, she was hit in the lungs, I guess, so she's in the hospital for 3 months. She wakes up, she sees visions of Abby stabbing Joel, and, we establish that she has this trauma, this revenge in mind. But yeah, I found the scene with Tommy tending to Joel's body touching. I love that he says to him, "Give Sarah my love," how they focus on the watch, which kind of represents how life stopped for Joel after the death of Sarah. And this element of the watch, this symbolism of the watch, comes back a few times during the episode. And I thought that was fairly well done. But it's interesting to me how they changed Tommy's character, because it's a very different character in the game. Tommy immediately goes after Abby. He wants to avenge Joel. And here, instead, later we have a scene where Ellie's trying to convince Tommy to go with her. And he's like, "No, I can't. I have responsibilities here," which is not Tommy's character in the game at all. Actually, your first mission is to go find him, and it's Maria, Tommy's wife, who asks you to leave Jackson and bring back her husband. So the dynamic here is very different.
Yeah. They're definitely changing a lot of the sort of character directions here. I did quite like this scene when she's trying to convince Tommy, because it's like the one few times this season where Ellie has been sort of put in her place a bit, and she's not just allowed to always be right, where she's saying to Tommy, hey, if this was you, Joel would be out there already trying to save you, and he's like, this is my brother, don't tell me you know him better than me, sort of thing. And it is true, because it would be different if Joel was still alive, but he is dead, so there is no desperate need to go out on this revenge mission, because it's not going to necessarily accomplish anything.
Yeah, which is the point. Revenge is pointless. But yeah. By the way, sorry, going back to the beginning of the episode before we move on, I was right. Last week I predicted one thing, and finally I'm right about something.
Yeah.
They changed the intro, and now it's the same intro, but it features just one little root coming out of the ground at the end representing Ellie instead of the two roots representing Joel and Ellie walking side by side. So it's very depressing start to the episode. I was just bummed out. But yeah, and I have a question for you, because this was something that kind of bothered me. We jump to 3 months later, and Jackson is back to some form of normalcy, I guess.
Some form of normalcy. They're playing goddamn baseball outside.
Yeah, exactly.
They're drinking cocktails.
They are drinking beers. They are playing baseball, Little League baseball, and they have functioning hospitals. I mean, they have it all. Like, they have counseling. It makes the post-apocalypse of the show feel way less dangerous.
Yeah, 100%. It ruins that stakes, and it's like, how can we go from what we saw in episode 2 to this so quickly? That's why I kind of felt this episode should have picked up directly after, to really drive home the aftermath of that attack, because it was probably one of the biggest action set pieces they've done in the whole series.
Totally.
Part 1 and part 2. And to not really see the aftermath of that, and then in 15 minutes into the next episode, everything is back to perfect life in Jackson. It weakens the consequences of this world.
I guess they are going for contrast with what will come next, with the W.L.F and the scars and everything that goes down in Seattle. But right now it just feels like, oh, why would you leave this idyllic place just to get some useless revenge? I don't know.
It is silly. Yeah, just every scene that Catherine O'Hara is in, the therapist lady, like every scene she's in is like a completely different show, with how lovely the world is, and how we're in therapy sessions, and it's just like, this is not Last of Us apocalyptic.
And it's so like, I hate to use this expression, but like screenwriting 101, like when you want to psychoanalyze your characters and you just get a therapist in the story. So you have the excuse to have like therapy sessions in the show.
Yeah, whereas you should be working that out through your characters in appropriate conversations with characters they've got pre-established relationships with, not just, I can explore Tommy's psyche now with the therapist. It's lazy.
And she just knows that Ellie is lying. Like, what? Can you read minds? Therapy is not just like, oh, I know when people are lying to me. Like, Ellie is lying, Joel was lying in the first episode. I don't know. Like, it feels like she is just a therapist ex machina kind of. I don't know.
She feels like one of those. It's like the self-insert for the writer or something like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like they're omnipresent. They know everything.
She's telling you how to feel about certain decisions and certain characters, and
exactly.
I don't like that. But we have a nice scene with Dina. Where she tells Ellie she knows where Abby's group is and where they're going. And I think Dina is really saving the show for me right now.
I like Dina so far. I thought this was a little bit just how cool and cavalier and
relaxed,
casual.
She's very relaxed.
Yeah, about this adventure they're about to go on. She's like, you could have just asked me, and it's like, well,
yeah.
And what, you would have gone at the drop of the hat to go on this murdering spree? It's like that doesn't seem to necessarily be within your character. It's like, hey, I'll come and kill 50 people for you at the drop of a hat. Let's go do this. It seemed that, again, I just don't. Sometimes the tonally inconsistent moments in this show are just very jarring.
They want her to bring some levity. Ellie is just depressed and full of revenge and hate and rage. And she needs to be...
Totally.
Yeah, but like it's a bit too quirky and funny when this is a very serious situation. And I don't think it was like this in the game.
That dynamic really comes across when they're riding the horses together later as they leave Jackson. They're on their way to Seattle. You just get the sense that Ellie's trying really hard, or Bella Ramsey's trying really hard to play this stoic.
Yeah.
Like we've said before, almost basically she's trying to be Joel in the first season, and then Dina is the light-hearted comedy relief, and she's always smiling and quipping in the back, and it's just a dynamic that where I'm watching this, and it's like, this just is not doing it for me.
Yeah. But in this scene between Dina and Ellie is introduced for the first time to the faction that Abby and her group belong to in Seattle, which is the Washington Liberation Front, the W.L.F, as it's shortened.
Yeah.
And here I come with the kind of commentary that only I, an Italian, can provide to you and our listeners. Because this is a very funny thing. W.L.F in Italian is like an acronym that you will find written on walls, in bathroom stalls, like everywhere. And it basically is an acronym for Long Live the Pussy. Viva la figa means.
Oh, if Druckmann knew about that, he would change it straight away.
So you can imagine when I played the game for the first time, and at some point you're in Seattle as Ellie, and you see W.L.F sprayed on a wall. And I was like, what the fuck? What is going on? Like, did an Italian came through Seattle in the post-apocalypse and write this on the wall? So yeah, no, this is the kind of stuff that no one else is talking about, and I am bringing you this juicy info.
That's a hot take. That's a hot take right there.
Yeah, you see, like unique stuff that we are bringing to the table, guys.
But actually, before that, we get sort of a bit of a cutaway scene with a father and a daughter and this group of, they kind of look very cultish.
Yeah.
And they've all got scars on their face.
And they are called scars.
Oh, they're called scars, are they? Okay, yeah. How obvious.
Well, Druckmann is not one for subtlety, is he?
That is true. Yeah, so we get introduced to these characters. We get a little bit of their way of life. They seem to worship this woman called the Prophet who died not too long ago. And they're sneaking through the woods. They seem to be on a bit of a pilgrimage, and then they hear something coming, or like they get a signal from their group further behind them, and they're like, oh, the wolves are coming, and we can assume that it's Abby's crew or like
other people from this faction. Yes.
Yeah. And then actually that scene happens quite early on, and that disappears, and we don't come back to that until basically right at the very end. But before Ellie and Dina go off to make their journey, we get the return of our favorite character.
I was just shouting at the TV, man. I was, and we should call him by his name. He's not just homophobic man now. He is Seth. He's back, and he's the best. So we didn't think it would be such a major character in the show, but here he is.
I mean, I honestly can't believe it. Like I said, because I think I said in the last review or the review before that, maybe Seth is about to have the greatest arc across this season, and I think it's going to be true.
I mean,
he already currently has probably the best characterization of anybody so far.
I mean, he's the most layered character. He has flaws, but he also really very loyal, and he knows that Ellie's right in her quest. Well, I mean, he believes that. So it's
and he's been on a journey of self-discovery, and he's learning stuff about the world, and he's learning to accept people of different beliefs and ideologies. And honestly, Seth is the best character in The Last of Us right now.
And we owe him an apology, because we thought it would just be one-off homophobic guy, but actually they decided to give him a little bit of a positive role in the story. And I think that shows a level of awareness of how that character was perceived in the game from Craig Mazin, I'm guessing, let's give him a little bit more. It's not just like an homophobic asshole. It can be,
Well, I mean, I don't want to praise this too much. Yeah. I am to some degree joking here because it's so weird. I thought the moment in the council meeting, so we get the council meeting. Yeah. So Ellie decides she speaks to people individually first. We get a scene with Tommy, we get a scene with Jesse, and a scene with Dina where she wants to propose the idea of going on this revenge mission, and Jesse tells her she should propose it to the council and we'll have a vote on it and we'll do this through the correct channels. And classic Ellie is like, oh, fuck you, you don't want to fucking help, and that's her general attitude towards the situation.
It's not that bad, man.
As tends to be. And even though you're like, yeah, absolutely fair enough, all these people here have had family members who probably died in the last few months at this attack. Why is Joel more significant than anybody else's family member? So I totally get Jesse's opinion here. And then we move on to the council meeting, and we get a couple people chiming up different positions. Somebody says basically what I just said there. They had other family too that died, and they think it's too soon to be going on a revenge mission after what just happened. You get other people agreeing with the position to go after Joel's killers, and then we get, is it before or after Ellie's speech? Ellie gives her sort of rousing speech.
I think
homophobe.
Yeah, I think the guy is first. Like, he goes first saying, oh, we need to do something because then they're gonna come for us. And then Ellie goes for her speech. And
we get a nice little kind of switch of focus on as Ellie turns around.
Yeah, they look at each other.
Oh my god! Yeah. It's like, this guy's on my side, and I don't know like what they're trying to say necessarily. Are they like? Well, I was thinking in that moment. Oh, are they making this guy take her position because he's wrong? And the position of revenge is wrong. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, yes and no. I think they just want to show that her quest for revenge, and she says it's not about revenge, wink, wink. It's meta commentary on the story of the game and the show. We don't want you to think that this is going to be about revenge. And I feel like, yes, maybe you have a point in saying, oh, they want to show this guy being in the wrong. But I do feel like there is some validity to what he's saying and what Ellie is saying. And from their point of view, and this game and the show are also a lot about perspective, as we said. From their point of view, this is a worthwhile endeavor. So I don't know if they're just painting them as being wrong. They're just painting them as being driven by a negative emotion that can be self-destructive. And that's, kind of what the story is going to be about, I am guessing.
Yeah, we just don't get nobody else other than Dina wholeheartedly supports Ellie's point other than homophobe man. So I kind of felt like there was sort of making a point in that bit. But that was so funny. I was watching it with my mate and we were howling with laughter as he started chiming in, and he started giving his point. I was just like, oh my god, where are they taking this character? Is he now? I'm assuming that bit's not in the games, that council.
No, because the council is not in the game at all, and I kind of like how they are showing how the town works. It's not in the game, but it makes sense for the show to show it, since they are focused on the community surrounding these characters and not just on the characters themselves. I think it makes sense. And they decided to use this character that was briefly shown in the game to kind of like be the mouthpiece for the revenge side of the argument, that they are having within the community. And also, as I said before, the whole thing happens in a very different way, because they bury Joel, and then Ellie is immediately on her quest. She's going after Tommy, who already left to go find Abby and her group, and Maria asks Ellie to go after Tommy. So basically the mission at the beginning of the game and the beginning of like this quest that they're going on is to rescue or retrieve Tommy. And so it's Maria who gives Ellie and Dina the horse and the equipment that they're going to use on their journey. But in this show, It's fucking Seth again. Let's fucking go. What a character. He is back with his cane.
This is peak Seth right here. Seth is reaching the highest heights, of any character in any story that's ever been written, probably.
Yeah. We can just shut this podcast right now, and it's Seth won everything.
Let's just call it the Seth of us. Now let's just fucking sack this off.
I hope it's not the last of Seth that we will see. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Unfortunately, oh no, maybe it's not, because we might get some cuts back to the town when we see Tommy and stuff. But yeah, I really hope it's not the end of his story, because I just couldn't believe they gave him this moment. It's so bizarre. It's such a bizarre choice, isn't it? To make him the guy who's like, I'm gonna send you on your way and take my sniper. It's better, and then also have him being, sort of really trying to redeem himself and be good to Ellie and Dina. But then Ellie's still a dick to him.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't like that she's so resistant to him being on her side. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't like that he is on her side because she doesn't like him.
Oh no, exactly that. It's exactly that. She doesn't like him, so she doesn't want to accept any of these things. But he says he would go with them, which I was so disappointed about. I was like, go on, just jump on the horse, Seth. Let's do Seth, Ellie, and Dina. This will make the show so much better.
Seth becomes the new Joel.
Yeah. And he says he got shot with a piece of mist-friendly fire during the siege.
Yeah.
And then Ellie goes, oh, are you sure it was missed on purpose, sort of line?
That was so unnecessary. I thought it was
so unnecessary. It's basically insinuating, oh, you deserve to be murdered. Secretly murdered whilst you're defending the people of Jackson. If I was there, I would have shot you in the back of the head and not told anybody. Basically is what she's insinuating, as this guy gives her his new sniper as well.
Oh my
It's
God.
he's got the best sniper in town, and he's giving it to her, and all she can do is be a fucking petulant bitch to him.
Bella Ramsey is doing a decent job as the character, but they are writing her way too abrasive, which makes sense for the state she is in at this time in the story. But I feel like
it's too much.
Yeah, they're going a little bit too hard on the edgy teenager.
As me and my friend were watching it, Seth sticks his hand out for a handshake, and I was like,
spit on it.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, it'd be too much if she just rode away and didn't shake his hand. But I honestly wouldn't have been surprised with the way this depiction of Ellie is characterized here if she had have done that. And that should have really been, if you're going to give Seth all these moments in the story, then that should have been a time where they completely reconcile to a degree. And she's like, actually, you know what? Thanks.
Totally. Yeah. They come to an understanding of each other.
Yes. It just seems so bizarre to go in that direction, especially like you said, when the games, he does not have that role either. It was just so weird.
Not that I remember. I would be so surprised when I replay the game and I find him to be this major character that I forgot about. But yeah. Anyway, we get to the scene at Joel's grave, which for some reason is far away from the town, which is not the case in the game.
That seemed weird.
But the scene itself is pretty good, great music, it's very touching. It changes from the game itself, not only in location, but in time of year, because the scene at the grave happens right after the attack in the winter. So there's snow around, but here we have this beautiful fields of crop and this lonely tombstones on a fiery sunset. So yeah, it was was a dawn, I guess. They were leaving during the night. So yeah, it was a touching scene. Love it. Then we have a very quick rendition of Ellie and Dina's journey, which it takes a few hours in the game of puzzles and just walking around and horsing around, I guess.
Yeah, they really I'm not sure how far geographically Jackson is to Seattle. I don't think they're super close. I think it would be...
No, it's a very long journey.
It'd be quite a long journey. And again, this just highlights how the world is only dangerous when it's relevant to the story, or when it's needed to be by the writer, because we can have a quick cut of Ellie and Dina going on this massive journey, just those two.
Yeah.
And they haven't encountered any trouble on their route at all, it seems like. And we get a scene when they're on the road and they're like 6 miles out or whatever from Seattle. And it's like, oh, well, that was a pretty chill, easy journey you've just had, and it lowers the stakes because we're trying to quickly get our characters to this place. But at any time, I think in a post-apocalyptic world or like a zombie environment, those kind of stories, anytime a character sets foot out of a safe place and goes somewhere unknown, it should always be taxing, and it should always have to overcome lots of challenges, because it's how it would be. And then, you can't just have these things only pop up
when it's convenient.
Inconvenient, yeah.
And it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, that they are not really taking advantage of the format. Like, you are doing a TV show. I guess they didn't have the budget for it. I think this season is 7 episodes, so it's 2 episodes short of last season. So
really?
It's a very short season. If they adapted this back in 2013 when the game came out, we would have had like a 24 episode season where the journey to Seattle was, a couple of episodes where, maybe Dina and Ellie come across some new characters and they have to solve some problem, or like they are in the national park that they travel to and they find some monsters, some infected that they have to run from. And I guess, that's not integral to the story that you're telling. The game has pacing issues, but what works is the kind of like balance, the rhythm of, story and then gameplay and then puzzle and then fights. In those moments that they are skipping over, because of course it's a TV show, it's not a game, those moments are important. And if you're just skipping to, okay, the next story beat happens in Seattle, so we're going to Seattle.
Yeah.
You are robbing the story of some of its potential, I guess, because you're not taking advantage of the medium you're telling the story in. Just give me a few extra moments with these characters. I know that you can't just, break into a fight scene every once in a while for no reason, but make up reasons. Come up with interesting scenarios to put these characters in that kind of tells us a little bit more about them.
Yeah, rather than having scenes with Ellie discussing her feelings with a therapist in the town who's not really an integral character anyway, not in the story yet. You have long scenes of Ellie and Dina on the horse having conversations. Like you said, it doesn't have to be all out action on this journey, but these are the moments where you can take a bit of downtime and you can get into the real depth of the characters through conversations they're having on their way. And that's what most other like really good stories do in these moments. Whereas here is, like you said, just quick cut to get to the next beat, and it kind of has the same vibe as the latter seasons of Game of Thrones, where characters are fast traveling all around the world. And whereas in the earlier seasons, if somebody had to go to a different place or a different settlement, that was a big thing, because as it would be back then when you had to travel on horse or by foot, it adds to the realism of the world when you take time with those things.
Totally.
I couldn't believe it when they switched to the next scene and there was like a road sign with Seattle. It was like, oh, we're almost here. I was like, what?
They are rushing through it, even though they are splitting the season into 2. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I guess they want to get to the interesting stuff, which is the conflict between the W.L.F and the Scars. Speaking of which, the Scars, we go back to that scene that you were talking about earlier. Well, we don't go back to the scene. We go back to the setting, like the area in which we saw these cars walking through. And now it's Ellie and Dina, and they find these corpses. So we are assuming that the W.L.F, either Abby's group or other people from the W.L.F, found these people and killed them.
I mean, when I saw it, I didn't assume Abby's group, just because the show in episode 1 and 2, they kind of they told us the morality of these characters.
But Ellie does think that it's them.
Yes. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Which I found interesting, because to her, they are just monsters that could do anything. Oh, there's a kid lying dead on the ground. It must have been Abby, which I thought it shows how blinded by rage and hate she is.
And Dina, they're sort of exploring. They see a dead body in the middle of the path, and then Dina sort of walks off, and she sees something which makes her sick. And then, Ellie goes over and walks over to see what it is, and it's the father and daughter we saw in the opening scene of these characters, and everyone's been massacred. The whole group's been massacred. They're all spread around. We assume it's the wolves, but Ellie thinks it's Abby in this moment. And then they continue on their journey, and it's sort of, you get a little bit of a moment where it seems to have given Ellie a bit more drive, but Dina seems now like a little unsettled by this, and maybe it's seeping into her head that actually this is a bit too much for them to take on this mission. And then we get them setting up camp together because she can tell it's raining like 6 hours before it's going to rain. So she sets up camp, and we get this little tent scene with them two kind of rekindling the sort of romance between the two characters that we haven't seen since their kiss at the dance.
Yeah, they're treating it very differently here because it feels like Dina is playing coy about it. She doesn't really want to give that moment too much weight. While, of course, Ellie clearly has very deep feelings for Dina, and she mentions Jesse. So yeah, I'm curious to see how they develop the relationship, because this is what's going to hold people's interest for the coming few episodes, I'm guessing. This relationship between Dina and Ellie kind of replaces the core relationship between Ellie and Joel. And that's kind of like a point of contention for fans of the game as well. They're like, oh, you are getting rid of Joel. You better bring me something really interesting to replace this amazing character that you're killed off. So I don't know. Like it's going to be interesting to see how they manage to develop their budding romance as they explore Seattle, as they come into contact with characters from Abby's group and these Scars, who are this other faction that the W.L.F is in conflict with, and Ellie and Dina find themselves kind of like in the crossfire of this war. So yeah, there's a bunch of potentially interesting stuff coming, but I don't know. I'm cautiously waiting for them to reveal what their plan is and how they intend to resolve the season. Where do they intend to cut off the story that they're telling?
You'd think they would sort of leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger, but I'm not too sure what kind of big moment that would be, because like we said, we thought maybe it would be Joel's death at this point.
Yeah,
but
I don't know, like maybe next episode is going to be an Abby episode and they go back and forth between the two plot lines.
Yeah,
maybe they could do it like this, and next episode we get a look at how the W.L.F operates, how Seattle is doing, how the Scars are coming into the picture, why there's this conflict between them. Maybe that's the case. Maybe instead of having, like how we discussed in previous episodes of the show, instead of having the storyline end abruptly and move to another character, which is Abby, we can kind of like go back and forth between these two narratives, and that's gonna help the story feel more cohesive. I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, we shall see. And it seemed, we get Ellie and Dina ride up to the end of this sort of broken highway, and they can see Seattle in the distance. And I almost thought immediately that the guy in the sniper tower saw them or was about to spot them.
Yeah.
And I thought that would have been so silly, because obviously, I assume there's a lot of people from the W.L.F. I assume they're quite a big settlement.
I mean, we've seen quite a lot of them at the end of the episode as well, marching down the street.
Yeah, they seem to have a serious military force. So you'd imagine they're a big sort of well-run settlement, and it just so happens that one of the guys she wants revenge on is up in the watchtower.
Yeah, and sees her already. Yeah, that would have been fucking insane.
I genuinely thought that was about to happen. I was like, oh my god, this show is gonna go real downhill.
By the way, I forgot to mention this last time, but the Manny character, the one that is up in the watchtower, the pendejo guy, he is played by the new Falcon from Falcon and the Winter Soldier and from Brave New World.
There's a new Falcon.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, you have a new Captain America, and so the Falcon role is vacant, so they put a new one there.
Oh
yeah. I love how I just assume that you know these things, and then every time you're like, wait, what did they do, why? And it just puts into perspective how
but does Anthony Mackie still have the wings as well?
Yeah, so there's two wing guys. Yeah.
Oh, that's so stupid.
Oh, come on, man. One wing guy can be fun. Two wing guys is just way more fun than one.
Just give all the soldiers wings.
Yeah, why not?
Everyone can be Falcon. Falcon's not special anymore.
Okay, well, guess that's all we have to say about this.
Yeah, and obviously it sets up the tone. We see, they've got like 3 tanks basically and all these soldiers. Again, I kind of have that thing, and it happened throughout this episode as well. The same thing I mentioned about the first episode, about everybody's hair and makeup and clothes being so on point.
Yeah.
And it's highlighted really badly in the scene where Ellie and Dina are on the horse after having spent the night in the tent, and they both look, their hair is perfect.
Yeah.
Again, just so silly. All those soldiers as well were all like really young and like a bit trendy looking. It's just the casting in this show is bizarre.
It's bizarre. I agree.
And like, yeah, the attention to detail when it comes to those things, I think, is lacking. But yeah, we're setting up that they've got some insurmountable odds to face. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. Yeah, on the whole, I didn't think this was a very good episode. You mentioned that Bella Ramsey had done a good job. I thought this was maybe one of her weaker episodes.
Okay.
And she had a couple climactic moments, like the speech at the council meeting, the screaming when she woke up, and just a couple of the bits like later on in the episode. I just don't think she's got a massive amount of range in the kind of emotions she puts out, and I don't think her performance is very nuanced.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's stuff that could be improved. But I was expecting worse for some reason. I don't know. Like, I felt like the dramatic moments, the scene at the grave, she tells a lot with her eyes about how she's feeling, about Dina as well later on in the episode. So I don't know. Like, I feel like it's a mixed bag. I'm not saving the performance, and also I'm still holding out because there's way more difficult moments to come that she needs to kind of pull off. But I think in this episode, for what she was supposed to do, kind of like dealing with Joel's death, I think all the actors did a fairly good job.
Yeah, probably for me this episode is bang average. You know, we're maybe a 5 out of 10 for this one, and starting to see the cracks continue to show, I think, now with this show.
Yeah, I'll give it the same score that I gave the previous one, like 5.5, I think I gave it. So yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Well, yeah, we can move on.